Hey VC, it's Jonathan, your cheap and cheerful record collector. I hope everybody's doing well out there today. I've been thinking about doing this video for a while now, and originally it was going to be my top 10 favorite jazz musicians, but I couldn't keep it to 10. So what I have is my top 10, and then I have my 10 runners-up or honorable mentions. Again, this is just my opinion. Everybody has different opinions on who should be there. Any given day of the week, if I made the list up again, some of those in my honorable mention might be in the top 10 and vice versa. You know, I'm sure people will write after I show this video and say, how could you leave out so-and-so? And I said, well, it's my video. You like somebody else? That's great. Let me see your video and show me what your top jazz musicians are. But for me, these are my top 10. With my 10 honorable mentions besides that. I've been a jazz hound ever since I was a kid. When I was like 14 or 15, my dad bought me a box set of jazz, and I remember listening to that, and most of it I wasn't really interested in, but they had Dizzy Gillespie doing Swing Low, Sweet Cadillac, and I thought that was the greatest thing I ever heard in my life. I couldn't believe how great it was, and I just became a jazz fan from then on. We're going to start off with the one man who possibly could be considered the father of jazz in America. The guy who, as much as anybody, formed what we know as jazz, and that's, of course, Louis Armstrong. And here he is with his Hot 5, Volume 1. Fantastic album on Columbia. He does Gut Bucket Blues, Muskrat Ramble, the Heebie-Jeebies. I love the story on Ken Burns' jazz documentary, saying that when they recorded this album, or these albums, when he was recording with the Hot 5, that he was so powerful in the studio that he overwhelmed the entire band, and that they had to have Louis stand in the hallway to record with the whole band around the mic, Louis in the hallway, and he still was so powerful. So amazing trumpet player, cornet player, and one of the fathers of American jazz, of course, Louis Armstrong. Next, this guy I consider probably the greatest jazz composer of the 20th century, and that, of course, Duke Ellington. This is his album, Masterpieces by Duke Ellington and his orchestra, uncut concert arrangements, Mood Indigo, Sophisticated Lady, etc. Fantastic, and this I know has been repressed many times, audiophile pressings. I'm happy to have this. This is a Columbia 6i, and it sounds great to me, so I really don't need to be bothered with getting all those fancy audiophile recordings. But yeah, Duke Ellington, maybe the greatest composer of jazz in the 20th century. Next, a piano player that they said there was this guy and there was everybody else, and that's Art Tatum. Art Tatum used to walk into a jazz club and people go, God's here. Art played like nobody else. The story I heard, I don't know if it's true or not, Art was blind from a young age, and that his mother would play piano rolls, and he would copy them and learn to play by listening to them. And on some of the piano rolls, there were actually two piano players playing, and he didn't realize that, and he played as two players, and he is an amazing player. If you've never heard Art Tatum, you have to check him out. Just incredible. Art Tatum. One of my other favorites, the great Lee Morgan. This is my favorite album by him, The Sidewinder. This is with Lee Morgan, Joe Henderson, Barry Harris, Bob Crenshaw, and Billy Higgins. The Sidewinder, Totem Pole, Hocus Pocus, Boy What a Night. Amazing record. Amazing trumpet player on the regular Blue Note label. Killed very early in his 30s. His common law wife shot him to death at the club Slugs in New York City. There's a great documentary called I Called Him Mr. Morgan, and you should definitely check that out. I went to Slugs a couple of times before he was murdered there. Saw Larry Coryell there a couple of times in the East Village. But yeah, one of my favorites, Lee Morgan. These are in no particular order until the last one. That's the best. But at the moment, these are my favorites. How about Bill Evans? Love this album. Interplay with Freddie Hubbard, Jim Hall, Percy Heath, and Philly Joe Jones. Bill Evans just had such a way with the piano. Just amazing. So one of the great piano players, one of the great jazz musicians of all time. For me, anyway. Bill Evans. Now we get down to the real nitty-gritty. The top 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, top 5. And these are all a no-brainer. Number 5, Charlie Parker, Bird. Bird at St. Nick's with Al Haig on piano, Roy Haynes on drums, Red Rodney on trumpet, Tommy Porter on bass. And what do you say about Bird? Like they say, he played notes that nobody had ever heard before. Also died very young, unfortunately. But yeah, Charlie Parker, Bird. Number 4, John Coltrane. One of my favorite albums by him, Plays the Blues. And this has McCoy Tyner, Elvin Jones, Steve Davis on bass. Just a beautiful, beautiful album. Nothing new here. Nothing you don't know about John Coltrane. Number 3. One of the first jazz musicians I ever saw live. I saw him at the Village Vanguard about 1965. I was 16 years old, and they used to have Sunday matinees. And I remember I was with my friend. We were walking around the village for the day, and we passed by the Village Vanguard. There's a sandwich sign outside. It said, matinee today, 2 o'clock. And we looked at each other. We said, we got to go in. And who was playing? But Charles Mingus. This is one of my favorite albums by him, Mingus Au. This is obviously a later repress, one of those audiophile things, double with a gatefold, 2-record set. Just fantastic. Better Get Into Your Soul, Goodbye Pork by Hat, Open Letter to Duke, Bird Calls, Fables of Faubus. Fantastic. Amazing bass player, amazing musician, composer. One of my all-time favorites. Charles Mingus. And I'm so lucky at 16 years old to be able to see him live at the Vanguard, even though it was an afternoon and it looked like the band was just waking up. Number 2, of course, the great Miles Davis. This is his album In a Silent Way. I think I like this even more than Kind of Blue, but right up there with it. This has Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea, Wayne Shorter, Dave Holland, Joseph Zwinelli, John McLaughlin, Tony Williams. Come on. Kind of Blue. Fantastic. Still in the shrink. And then my number 1, which you've watched my channel, you know he's my favorite jazz musician of all time. I think he's the greatest musician of the 20th century, and it is Thelonious Monk. This is Monk in Action, which is one of the first albums I had by him. This is a newer repress on Riverside with Johnny Griffin on tenor sax, Ahmed Abdul Malik on bass, Roy Haynes on drums. Recorded at the 5-Spot, August 1958. It's just, the master. There was everybody else. Monk was just in another world. Just amazing musician. Great composer. Love his stuff more than anybody else. And I did get to see Monk at Newport Jazz in New York around the mid-70s, early 70s. Newport kicked the jazz festival out of Newport. And they went to New York City and had a number of concerts in New York. And it had to be about 75, I want to say. 1975, 76. I got to see Monk at Carnegie Hall. So there you go. Thelonious Monk, my number 1 musician of all time. And then my 10 honorable mentions. And again, in any other given day, these could be in the top 10 just as easily. And you have Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. This is Just Coolin'. And this does have Lee Morgan in it, as well as Hank Mobley, Bobby Timmons, Art Blakey on drums. Art Blakey, one of my favorite. They're all my favorites, but Art Blakey, fantastic. Another drummer, Max Roach. Another fantastic album with Booker Little, George Coleman, Ray Draper, Art Davis. Recorded in 1958 also. Max Roach. How about this guy? Again, not up there with the Miles Davis and Lee Morgan, I don't think, but he just has something that speaks to me, and that's Chet Baker. Love his singing, love the way he plays. Technically not up there with some of the greats, but I love him. Just really, this is a Sam Records out of France. Fantastic recording, fantastic pressing, and even that's the inner sleeve, and it even comes with a small poster, suitable for framing. There you go. There's Chet. So, love Chet Baker. How about the great Herbie Hancock? This is Taken Off with Freddie Hubbard and Dexter Gordon, Butch Warren and Billy Higgins. This is the Blue Note Classic Series. Fantastic. Just, it's, you know, everything he does is great. Even his electronic stuff is amazing. Now this guy, again, is one of my favorites. He could easily be on the top 10 personally, and that's Sonny Rollins. This is Saxophone Colossus with Sonny Rollins, Max Roach, Tommy Flanagan, and Doug Watkins. Just, I have so many Sonny Rollins albums. Recently got The Bridge, which I was really happy about, but love his tone. Still around, 92 years old, still around and playing. Just one of the greats. This guy changed everything, made jazz more accessible to younger people, college kids. And, of course, it's Dave Brubeck. And this is Dave Brubeck Quartet at the Time Out. This is a later pressing, but it's still a mono pressing. Not the original 6i, but really nice, in really good condition, which is why I have it. I have a 6i also, but not in great shape. But, yeah, Dave Brubeck, fantastic. Another piano player from Canada, plays in the style of Art Tatum, but does his own thing with it, and that's Oscar Peterson. This is his album, The Trio, with Ray Brown, Ed Thigpen. There's the guys, live from Chicago. Another great, great album by the great Oscar Peterson. More piano, Horace Silver, Song for My Father. Love this album. Carmel Jones, Joe Henderson, and Horace Silver, Teddy Smith, and Roger Humphreys. Song for My Father, Calcutta Cutie, Que Pasa, The Kicker. Fantastic. This is a DMM, Blue Note, still sounds great. Love Horace Silver. Great feel for the piano. How about this guy? How about Art Pepper? Great saxophone player. Sad life. Was in jail many times for drug abuse. Back in the day when if you were an addict, they just threw you in jail, forgot about you. This is with Russ Freeman, Ben Tucker, and Gary Frommer. This is a beautiful, beautiful album. The Art Pepper Quartet. This was, I think it was the Record Store Day issue a couple of years ago. Fabulous. And number 20 out of all my music, all the favorite artists. And it's an old guy from way back in the day. Played around the same time Louis Armstrong did. There's a white guy from the Midwest, and that is Bix Beiderbecke. Bix also died very young, drank himself to death by the time I think he was 28 years old. But what a player. Played with some hokey bands. Paul Whiteman's the freaking worst. But when Bix stood up and played, everybody took notice. Just amazing, amazing player. Cornet and trumpet, but more cornet player. This is Bix and His Gang, Volume 1. I have a number of Bix Beiderbecke albums and read a couple of books on him. And just Bix, sad life, but what a player. Bix Beiderbecke. So there you go. Those are my 10 plus 10 favorite jazz musicians of all time. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd like to see your picks of your 20 or top 10 jazz musicians and why you like them. And I appreciate all the new subscribers I've gotten. And again, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. I really would appreciate it. If you like what you saw, give me a thumbs up. And until next time, peace.